Yes, let me recap what we were talking about. So where we left off was 1961 in Congo, the assassination or death of Patrice Lumumba, who was the first prime minister of Congo after the independence. And
Yeah. So Africa, the West were in turmoil,
mhm,
or the colonial powers were in turmoil because there was Nkrumah's influence was all over the place. And the Congo became a classical case because of uranium.
okay,
Uranium became very, very strategic because of the strategic military importance for the atomic bomb, nuclear bomb, and all that. So Congo had plenty, and the
mm,
Americans were interested, and they felt that Lumumba was moving towards the Soviet sphere of influence, which of
mm,
course was not true. So they sabotaged Lumumba. The
something online
Belgians,
about
the
this.
Americans, the French, the South
Mm,
Africans, Rhodesians, all they got together and sabotaged Lumumba. And Ghana stood up and got the United Nations that they should intervene, or they
mm,
themselves, Ghana, Nkrumah was mobilizing people to go and intervene. So he
mm,
mobilized Ghanaian troops and were telling other African countries also to provide troops for them to go and intervene in the Congo and kick out the Belgians and the Americans. So it became a UN operation. And there they sabotaged, and then it ended up there where Lumumba was assassinated. That was January 1961. And that incident shook Africa and shook Nkrumah. So he started to strategize and then pushing for unity and the need for an African high command, that
mm,
we all have to come together, pull troops together, and defend and protect Africa. That was his message. He also started writing and exposing the whole character and nature of colonialism,
mm,
and particularly what he called the neocolonialism. And it got to a point where another incident happened that was between 63 and 64, Rhodesia, present day Zimbabwe.
yeah,
It was a settler regime, and they also declared unilateral independence. That was the settler, the whites.
the white settlers in Zimbabwe.
Yes, in that time it was Rhodesia.
Mm,
And then at that time, the British Prime Minister was a Labour Prime Minister. That was Harold Wilson, who
mm,
had become the new Labour Prime Minister. And Nkrumah and others were very happy that, oh, we have a Labour government, so they will be sympathetic.
mm,
But it turned out not to be so. Nkrumah asked Harold Wilson to send troops to Rhodesia to quell the rebellion by Ian Smith and his people. Harold Wilson told Nkrumah that did he expect him, the prime minister, to send troops to go and kill his kith and kin? That really devastated Nkrumah and said that something had to be done. So we had to start mobilizing ourselves to go and stop that separatist agenda. They had South Africa that they were concerned about. You had
mhm.
Namibia, you had Mozambique, Angola. Then you're going to have Rhodesia also. So something had to be done about it.
Were you involved in, because you were aware and you were part of the Young Pioneers
No,
movement?
I was not involved at that particular time because I was in
Okay.
my teens. But I was aware.
Of what was happening around you?
I was very
Okay.
much aware. One of the greatest impact of my life was the death of Lumumba, the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. Nkrumah
Mm,
came on the national radio to tell the nation about it. And
I
he was
see.
crying, basically, as he told the nation about the dastardly act that had committed, and Lumumba had been slaughtered along with two others of his compatriots. And Nkrumah always kept the nation informed of
Mm,
activities. across Africa and the world. He will regularly speak to the nation and educate the nation about what was happening.
I
So
see.
some of us always we were by the radio, reading our newspapers and all that, and following things avidly.
Mm,
We were really highly in tune with what was happening across Africa. So coming back to Rhodesia and Harold Wilson, they declared their independence, and Nkrumah was mobilizing other African countries for them to go and intervene in Rhodesia and quell Ian Smith and the rebellion. This became a great concern to South Africa, to the US, to the French, the Belgians, Germans, Canadians, Australians, all of them, and the Israelis. This became of peculiar concern to them.
mm,
So they had to stop this. And they managed to do that by planning, placing a CIA agent in Ghana
mm,
and who masterminded the overthrow of Nkrumah in February 1966. I will go back a little bit. In 1963, May, the Organization of African Unity was formed in Addis Ababa, 1963.
yeah.
Look at the period, 1963. That same period, 63, then 64, that we had the Rhodesian heightened problem in the Rhodesia, that's current day Zimbabwe.
Hmm.
And in 1963, the chairman of the Organization of African Unity was Haile Selassie in Prahesi because the summit took place. He was the host of the
Mm,
summit in Addis Ababa. Then in 1964, the second summit took place in Cairo. So that was under Nasser, Abdul Nasser, who was also a very radical person who had kicked the British out of the Suez Canal. You remember,
mm,
you recall, yeah. So very radical at that time. If you host, you become the chair basically of Africa for 1 year.
yeah. For the Organization of African Unity, the OAU.
Abdul Nasser, Gamal Abdul Nasser became the chair in 64, and Nkrumah was to follow in 1965.
Mm,
And what they dreaded was that with Rhodesia and all that, for Nkrumah to become the chairman of the Organization of African Unity, and
mm,
Accra was going to be the base,
hmm.
it frightened the hell out of them. So everything had to be done to stop that.
Okay. Do they believe that with Ghana being the chair and Nkrumah leading that particular meeting, it would be more likely to get more armies to go stop
Right.
the settler separatists in Rhodesia?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So 63, then 64, that is May, then 65, May. But then the summit was going to be held in Accra. So the British, the Germans, the French, and the Americans, the Israelis, the South Africans, they did everything to sabotage to make sure that the summit could not take place in Ghana for Nkrumah to
Mm,
assume the chair of the Organization of African Unity.
mm.
So they got several African countries also to boycott the summit. So the summit, instead of taking place in May 1965, there were so many attempts to sabotage that the summit eventually took place in October.
October of the same year?
Yes, October 65. And
Okay.
during that period, Nkrumah was also writing a book
Mm,
called Neocolonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism.
I
And
see.
the White House and Whitehall told him not to publish the book or face the consequences. But
Okay.
Nkrumah ignored them and published the book and
Sorry.
distributed it. Yes. Go
Another
ahead.
question. In October 1965, when the
Yes.
Organization of African Unity, when that event did it happen in
In
Accra
Ghana,
still?
yes.
Okay. So Nkrumah was still the chair,
Yes, became the chair in October. I became the chair.
but a lot of countries, African countries, boycotted that particular.
Yes, they got a lot of African countries to boycott them, to boycott.
Mm, okay.
But the summit came on.
Mm,
The summit came on and he distributed the books. That was in October, towards the end of October. The summit came on. Then they accelerated the process of undermining Nkrumah to prevent Nkrumah from executing the plan that he had in terms of intervening in Rhodesia. And if they got rid of Rhodesia, then of course South Africa will follow, Namibia will follow, Mozambique will follow, Angola will follow, and all that. So they saw what was happening, and everything that had to be done to get rid of Nkrumah, they did. By that time, they had planted a CIA person in Ghana, CIA personnel, and also a British and a French intelligence security apparatus. They have planted them in Ghana, and they were causing a lot of problems.
Yeah, I just wanted to add for the listeners as well that with what happened to Patrice Lumumba of the Congo, it's actually public knowledge now that the CIA was actually involved and they carried out an operation to go to Congo. And I think the operation lasted almost 7 years, and it was aimed to eliminate Lumumba and replace him with a pro-Western leader. Yeah, that was their main aim. And I think that's like more or less public knowledge now that everybody knows the CIA was involved. When you talk about the CIA and the British intelligence and the French intelligence being in Ghana at that time, I'm setting the context so that the audience realize that it's not an exaggeration. You know, this type of things was constantly happening back.
Thank
But
you
sorry,
very much.
continue.